Most adult family home projects don't go sideways because somebody forgot a rule or they didn't know a code. They go sideways because the floor plan that you're trying to operate out of was designed for a different business than the provider intended. Now, if you're new to adult family homes in Washington State, especially if you're deciding between buying an operating home or converting a single family home into an adult family home, this video is for you. The risk here is simple. So you're going to end up with a plan that looks compliant, but it's hard to staff, it's hard to operate, it's hard to supervise, and it's hard to fill. But today I'm going to show you a real quick tool that turns your business into layout decisions so your outcome is more predictable and the conversations that you have with your designers are more meaningful. And we're going to do this in three simple things. We're going to define your resident mix in very plain language. We're going to pressure test your staffing reality, and then we're going to translate both of those things into layout non-negotiables. Okay, before we get started into that, I want to separate a couple of ideas that get mixed up all the time. And the two ideas are pretty simple. It's that a plan can be approved and a home that works every day. These two things are not synonymous. They're not the same thing. And a plan can meet with all the requirements and still create burnout and constant interruptions and operational bottlenecks in your business. And those problems don't show up on the day that you get a permit or the day that you get licensed to open. They show up on the hard days, the days that the owner had to work the night before and somebody called in the next day, and the only other caregiver that's on shift is your brand new caregiver that you know is going to need more supervision, more training, require more of your attention. But you also have to run payroll and do an order, and you've got 2 family walkthroughs that afternoon. This is the worst day. This is the day that you're going to find out, does our building actually support us in operations, or does it hold us back? Here's the core rule. Your business model should be your floor plan. In an adult family home, your business model is basically 2 inputs, right? It's the resident mix, so it's who you intend to serve, and it's the staffing reality, so it's what coverage looks like on a typical day. But we want to focus on the hard days. And I think that there's a tendency in the industry of both architecture and adult family homes to talk about the typical day, right? So we hear, on a typical day, we've got 2 staff members, blah, 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 blah. But what about on the hard day? What does that look like? And if you don't name these things clearly, if you can't name your resident mix and your staffing on a hard day clearly, then your design team is going to make some assumptions. And usually that means that we're going to create a generic design that worked before and we didn't get any complaints about it. Let me tell you, you guys don't complain to your designer about what's going on in your business, mostly because you probably don't see them again because you're mad at them. And so they give you a generic solution. And unfortunately, things that are generic tend to send predictability to die because we don't know, and so it tends to not be used as well. So let's dive into resident mix in plain language. So resident mix doesn't mean a label. We're not talking about memory care. We're not talking about developmentally disabled. We're talking about what care actually looks like in the home. And typically there's a plain language way to say it. We can say something like, our residents are blank. They need blank help, especially during blank times. And I add in, they're here because we blank, right? We do something important that provides extra for them. So some examples of this are going to look like, our residents are mostly independent with some light assistance. They need reminders and meals and occasionally some mobility help. Or Our residents are high supervision. They need more observation, more redirection, and there's a high need for calm environments and controlled exits. If you can't say it in one sentence, you don't have clarity yet. You have hope. Resident mix drives your task density and your supervision load. And those two things drive layout more than anything else. If it should sound simple, but we don't actually work in your home, and so we need to know those two things. Okay, so now let's get to the part that makes it all real, and this is the staffing reality. Most early designs assume best case staffing. And why wouldn't we? You've got a typical day. Most days are always going to look the same. But predictability in your design and in your business comes from designing for the hard day, when someone calls out, when a resident needs extra support, when meds and meals and staffing and toileting and supervision all collide. So instead of asking, what do we want staffing to be? I think it's more important for you guys to ask the question, what staffing is realistically true often enough that we should plan for it? Now, I'm going to show you a real quick checklist that we call the staffing reality check, and you're going to mark what's true, and each check mark implies a different feature that you should protect in this tool. So that is a great segue into what this RML tool looks like, or resident mix layout translation tool. It's a really simple few page worksheet it's very easy to fill out. So the first thing that we're going to do is choose your resident profile. We're going to pick one or two, maybe, primary profiles. We're not trying to cover everyone here. You're trying to be coherent. You're trying to select for the residents that you are qualified and feel comfortable taking. Then we're going to look at staffing realities. So we know some common ones in adult family homes are that night shifts are typically long hours with only one caregiver. We also know that things like meals and supervision happen at the same time. We also know that meds are a predictable bottleneck. Toileting drives repeated trips during peak hours, right? That's what happens. You feed them all at the same time, they tend to all need to go to the bathroom at the same time. And the other thing that we know is that family visits are a marketing lever. So then what we're going to do is we're going to translate those two things into layout non-negotiables. So this is the minimum viable space program. This isn't the full design. This isn't everything that your designer needs to take into account, but it is what you need to refuse to compromise on because it protects your operations. Okay? If your resident mix and your staffing are your inputs, then your layout non-negotiables are your output. And hopefully you guys can all see this. But now let's make this concrete. Let's really dive into what are the 5 levers that you have, because most operational pain comes from just a small set of layout levers. The first one being travel distance. So if a staff must walk pretty far, and far is a relative term, for routine tasks, you're going to pay for it every day. You're going to pay for it in time, you're going to pay for it in fatigue, you're going to pay for it in missed moments, you're going to pay for it in a staff member that doesn't want to do it. And so they're not going to do the thing that they know that they should do every single time because they've got to go and get it. The other major one is sightlines. If a caregiver can't see the areas that matter, you substitute visibility with constant walking and interruptions, right? So they have to go and look. They have to be somewhere else than where they need to be. The other more minor ones that we all know are things like bathroom distribution, which isn't just the quantity of the bathrooms, right? It's not that you've got a bathroom for every single resident. It's that you've got bathrooms in locations where residents are every day. It's that you've got bathrooms where peak hour support happens. And when you don't have that, you create bottlenecks and safety risk. The other one is noise and calm zones. So especially if your resident includes a higher supervision or a high sensitivity, a calm retreat space prevents escalation. And the last one is, of course, that front of house experience. We all know that marketing isn't just ads for you guys, that the big part of your marketing happens when you can get the tour. And the two biggest parts of the tour are when they pull up and they get what everybody calls curb appeal. So what does this house look like from the outside? And then the second one is when they walk in that front door. It's the feeling that families get in that first minute. So that entry sequence matters, as well as privacy and cleanliness cues matter. You don't need an expensive building in order to do this. You just need a coherent plan. You need to know what you're trying to achieve. So now I want to talk just a little bit about how this applies to your specific boundary. So if you're buying an operating home versus doing a conversion, if you're buying an operational home, so a home that's already an adult family home that's already in operations, the key here is to use this RML matrix as a screening tool before you fall in love with what the numbers look like, or the layout of the house, or the resident mix that's there. And you can start to ask yourself, can the existing layout that we're looking at protect our non-negotiables, the things that we can't live without? Or will you be forced to make compromises that make your staffing harder? See, if you buy an existing home that can't support your resident mix and staffing reality, you're not really buying a faster start. You're buying rework risk, or you're compromising the residents that you should be taking and that you are more qualified to be taking, and you're going to pay for it later in redesign and operational friction. If you're doing a conversion, so if you're buying a single family home and you're going to convert it into an adult family home, your biggest risk are the hidden constraints. So the structure, the utilities, the odd circulation, and of course, anything that triggers code updates. The RML matrix tells you whether the building can become the business that you want or whether it's going to fight you. It's a very simple tool that does so much wonderful things for you guys as operators. So let's just recap real quick. The resident mix in plain language. You guys need to define this, and you need to clearly tell your designers who it is that you're going to serve and what their needs are. And then you need to consider your staffing on the hard day, the day that you're not looking forward to. And then all it takes is translating both of those things into layout non-negotiables. So the things that you can't live without because it's going to support your operations. If you do only one thing after this, print out this RML matrix. It's absolutely free for you guys, and treat the output as your design brief. In the next video, we're going to talk about preventing scope creep or scope drift and defining done before decisions multiply. So what does all that mean? And if you want a more predictable outcome, don't start with a floor plan. Start with clarity. Download this RML matrix, fill it out. It's going to take you way less than 10 minutes, and use it as a guide in every layout conversation that you have. That's how you reduce surprises without overcomplicating the project.